About 200 people held a sit-in yesterday at the State House over expanding the infrastructure for fossil fuels. Led by 350 Mass, the demonstrators want Governor Baker to block permits for new infrastructure such as natural gas pipelines. Among those in the campaign is a volunteer leader for 350, Dr. Sue Donaldson. Thank you very much for being with us, Doctor.
Pleasure, Chris.
And you were also one of, 6 people who were arrested at this event yesterday, is that true?
A week ago, 6 of us sat in beyond the time that the building closed, and we were all given summonses. I just got mine in the mail this morning. And yesterday, there were 200-300 people there supporting us. 26 of us sat in and were charged.
First of all, what got you involved in this campaign to begin with?
I started reading about climate change 4 or 5 years ago, and I was just suddenly struck with what a ghastly problem it is, what a serious problem, what an imminent problem. And after reading about it for a year or so and talking with some people getting involved in organizations, I decided to retire from my medical practice and work on climate full time. It just seemed like the biggest problem out there.
Well, for people in Massachusetts, what are the problems they have to worry about? As far as the problems from increased use of fossil fuels, whether it's climate change or other kinds of public health problems, maybe?
For many of us in Massachusetts, it's climate change, and that is in some ways now and in some ways in the future. For people who are near to fossil fuel power plants and so forth, there are issues of pollution, gas leaks, these kinds of things. But for most of us, it's climate change, and the weather, the sea level rise, the flood risk, the drought risk, the heat risk. I mean, teenage athletes die of the heat. And in 2003, there was a heat wave in Europe. They had 70,000 excess deaths just from heat. And we're going to see that here.
Yes, and I guess there will be things like heat island effects, respiratory problems maybe.
Absolutely. Respiratory problems, not only from the pollution from fossil fuels, but just from temperature, increased pollen. Plants bloom earlier, give off more pollen. Poison ivy actually creates more poison ivy oil in high CO2. So all of these things. Respiratory deaths, definitely a problem.
Well, these are sit-ins outside the door of Governor Baker, and you have some differences with him, but he's not a Donald Trump here, so why pick on Governor Baker?
He's not a Donald Trump. He's a bright man. Unfortunately, what he has done has lined up more with President Trump than I wish it did. We know that Trump is very pro-pipeline. He's pushing the Keystone XL. Governor Baker has been quite supportive of new gas pipelines, and our feeling is that any new investment in energy at this point can't be in new fossil fuel infrastructure. If we build a new natural gas pipeline today, it's going to be used for 40 years. In 40 years, both Massachusetts law and the Paris Agreement are telling us that we cannot be using that pipeline and burning natural gas.
Well, the governor is also supporting renewable energy, and is there enough of that soon enough so that we don't need expansion of access to natural gas here right now?
The Attorney General commissioned a study 2 years ago on whether Massachusetts needed new natural gas pipelines, and the answer was no. And in fact, it appears, although nobody will say this out loud, but there are clear indications that much of the natural gas that would come through these pipelines will go right past Boston, up to Canada, and exported. So there are ways to deal with the energy that we need without more fossil fuel infrastructure. There are renewables. There's also energy efficiency, which is a huge area that we do well. Massachusetts is the most energy efficient state, but there's a heck of a lot more we can do.
Well, what about efficiency? Because we have a lot of tall buildings going up in Boston, those glassy looking windows, and I hear people saying, wait a minute, if you're heating that in the winter and you're cooling it in the summer, how efficient is that?
I'm not an architect, but I know, for instance, that the town of Amherst has just passed something that says that all of their new town buildings must be net zero energy. And in Cambridge, where I live, we're working towards that. We have a net energy plan for new buildings. People who are building buildings now that are not very energy efficient or net zero are just missing the boat because it's not where we're going.
Talk about the number of people at this sit-in, because yesterday's figure was even surprisingly high for me, and you've been doing this several days up there. Talk about the increment of that.
It started way back when, months ago. A woman named Andrea Honore, who lives in Weymouth but works in Boston, was concerned about the proposed natural gas compressor station that is they're trying to build in Weymouth, and the community is up in arms because of public health issues around having a compressor station and the pollution. So she decided that she would go and sit in Governor Baker's waiting room every day during her lunch hour and ask him to speak with her about the compressor station. She just wanted to talk to him. And he didn't. No response. Walked right past her. So she started holding a little sign, Governor Baker, I've been sitting here for 63, 72, 85 days. And eventually, and who knows, but he said, you know what, let's put a hold on this compressor station and study the public health issues around it.
Okay, what is the public health concern there?
You know, I am not an expert on public health of compressor stations. I have colleagues who are, trust me. But it is pollution. It's some of the gas itself escapes and other gases that are in the neighborhood.
So she sent this petition to the governor. What happened next?
Well, he agreed to study the public health issues, and that's undergoing. But we were inspired by what she had done. So we have, for the last 3 months, we've had people just standing outside his office, and we have asked him to sign an executive order, which we have kindly drafted for him, that would instruct all of his agencies to do everything they can not to build any new fossil fuel infrastructure and to do everything that they can to promote renewables and energy efficiency and demand response and all the other things that we can do. And first we had 4 people standing there once a week, and then we had 8 people standing there twice a week, and then we had 16 people 3 times a week, and for the last week we've had 50 people standing there, and yesterday we had 200-300 people, and some of us chose to stay.
How important it is for you to have a visible turnout like that at a time like this?
I don't know what is going to move Governor Baker, because I don't understand why he is not doing what so many people feel so desperately needs to be done. So, you know, if people power can do it, great. If publicity can do it, great. If we could sit down and reason with him, I don't know if that would, I don't know what is going to, I mean, he's a smart guy. He's got the same facts that we have. If I have a patient and that patient's labs tell me that that patient's in big trouble and I need to do something now, I'm going to do it. And the fact that he has all these scientists saying, we are right on the edge of disaster. And he's like, yeah, maybe 2% this year. Oh, and I'm very green. You know, it makes me crazy. I don't get it. So I just feel, and that's why I got arrested. I was just sort of desperate to do whatever I could to get through to him.
Thank you very much for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
Dr. Sue Donaldson from 350 Massachusetts. We'll have more news in just a moment.